While this may come as a surprise to many of you, I do actually enjoy games that don't fall into the RPG genre. One such title is the often overlooked Rumble Racing. No, not that Rumble Racing. This Rumble Racing for the PlayStation 2. It's one of my most fondly remembered games from my childhood because of its incredible speed, kart racer-like power-ups, and its exciting stunt system. Some of you watching may also notice its resemblance to the PS1 title NASCAR Rumble, and that is no coincidence as this title is its spiritual successor. I thought about looking at this game as well, but I haven't put nearly enough time into this one to give it a proper review. But who knows, it may show up again sometime in the future. Anyway, getting things back on track, I have to admit that this video is less of a review and more of a recommendation. If you enjoy over-the-top, high-speed racing, then you need to find yourself a copy of Rumble Racing. Now, let's start with the obvious. As an early PS2 title, Rumble Racing certainly won't be winning any awards for its graphical or aesthetic design. The vehicles feel reminiscent of toys to me because of their almost blocky composition and vibrant colors, and the stages don't fare much better in terms of detail. On the other hand, that simplicity means that the game maintains a smooth frame rate with never a moment of slowdown. The game's lack of visual polish probably stems from two major factors: the fact that the game was an early entry on new hardware, and the fact that this game reaches incredible levels of speed at times, and it needed to make concessions to make that happen. In other words, while the game certainly isn't a feast for the eyes, it runs perfectly, which for a racing game should be the priority anyway, and it's clear by vehicles like this one that realism was never the goal to begin with. On the audio side of things, the soundtrack is an interesting mishmash of styles that range from twangy country to electronic beats, all of which fit the stages they are made for, but none of which are memorable or stand out. Even with years of experience with this game under my belt, I'd be hard-pressed to hum any of the tunes, which is a bit disappointing, but also kind of nitpicking. I have to be honest, this game had me so focused on the road at all times that I wasn't paying much attention to the audio surrounding it. In the end, I feel it neither adds or subtracts from the experience, except for one particular aspect.
That's right, you gotta take what's yours. Keep this up and I'll get you something nice. Can't you at least, pretend you're good?
The game has an audio commentator that frequently spouts one-liners, both supportive and antagonistic in nature. While I admittedly find his comments rather funny at times, I wasn't really paying enough attention to him for it to affect me either way. For those whom he annoys, which there will be a great deal of you, his commentary can be turned off in the menu, so at least there's an easy solution to that potential problem. I won't pretend that the game is some masterpiece of graphical design or that the soundtrack is a work of genius, but I can't deny that this game at least has character. But who cares about any of that? This is an arcade-style racing game, which means you are here for the fast and frantic fun, and Rumble Racing delivers that in abundance. As you play through Rumble Racing, you'll be tasked with completing multiple cups, like in most racing games, each of which rotates out tracks that focus primarily on stunts, shortcuts, or pure skill. While the majority of the game's courses use all three of these things, certain tracks will focus on testing one of the aspects above the others. It'll be a lot easier for me to explain this if I break down each track type on its own. The game's most obvious gimmick is the Stunt System, which is used to great effect. Each time you successfully complete a stunt, you are given a temporary speed boost, which is obviously beneficial, but the game's stunt tracks nearly have you in the air more than you're on the ground, meaning that if you race correctly, you will never run out of boost. Though, neither will your opponent, so you still need to be on your toes. The other tracks also have strategically placed ramps that you can still take advantage of, so it isn't as situational of an ability as you may think. Add in the fact that skilled players can use the stunt button to straighten their car out in the air after a huge explosion, and it adds a lot of depth to what would otherwise seem like a rather average arcade racer. On the other hand, the least interesting of the three course types, and often the most frustrating, are the tracks that rely on pure skill, as I put it before. To more accurately describe it, I will state that these are the tracks with the least opportunities for boosts, the least useful shortcuts, and often contain the most sharp turns and maneuvering. Now don't get me wrong, I'm glad that the game gives the opportunity for you to test your actual driving prowess and not just your skills and memorization, but these tracks in particular tend to feel the most cheap, due to the game's overall difficulty and rubber banding AI, but more on that bit later. Finally, there are the tracks that rely on shortcuts, and I mean really rely on them. The game doesn't just allow you to use the shortcuts, it demands it, because the AI you race against will be using them consistently from the mid-game onwards. In a rather brilliant stroke of game design, the developers chose to give players multiple shortcuts per track, some of which actually contradict each other. For example, there are some shortcuts that end after another one would begin, meaning that always going for the first available shortcut may not always be the best option. There are also scenarios where technically faster routes may slow you down with rough terrain, making it so the faster route is actually sticking to the main road. Rumble Racing is a game that rewards memorizing the tracks better than pretty much any other racing game I played. They even decided to give players an incentive to explore the tracks at their own pace by hiding literal Easter eggs on almost every one. And finding said Easter eggs gives you access to new cars, creating a system where your time spent learning tracks inside and out doesn't feel like a waste, which is another aspect of the game that I applaud. If all of this didn't make the game hectic enough, it also contains power-ups. bombs that send your opponents flying into the air, items that increase and reduce traction, a snowball that makes it so you can't turn, and a couple of others. But nothing beats the power of the almighty tornado. This game's equivalent to the blue shell only turns up when you are losing and is always a boon early in the game. But in a rather hilarious twist of fate, once you get to late levels, the cars drive fast enough to outpace the tornado, almost as if the developers are mocking late game use of the item, which I found to be hilarious. I personally enjoyed the use of power-ups in the game, but once again the developers offered more choice for the player, allowing you to turn them off if you want to rely purely on your racing ability. All that being said, the game isn't without its flaws. While playing the game, I shifted through the multiple difficulty settings and felt no difference between them, which leads me to believe that the game relies rather heavily on rubber banding AI. For those of you not familiar with the concept, rubber banding AI is a feature often used in racing games, where the computer-controlled racers will perform more proficiently once they've fallen behind the player. This is used as a means of always keeping the player on their toes, but is a very difficult balancing act to pull off because you can easily make the AI too overcompensating and make the races unfair. Rumble Racing walks dangerously close to this line, and there are actually a couple races where I felt cheated, being passed up in the last seconds of a race that I'd held the lead on the entire time up to that point. But even when those moments occurred, I'd always want to race again immediately after, and once I finally won, I was elated, so it must have worked to at least some extent. And just so we're clear, the game doesn't throw you to the wolves at the outset. It starts off fairly simple as you take on the Rookie Cups, but the difficulty ramps up rather sharply from there when you enter the Pro and Elite Cups. This change in difficulty is also reflected by the cars themselves, as each level grants an upgrade both visually and stat-wise. While it is a small touch, I always enjoy seeing what each car looks like at each stage. It gives a sense of progression that I feel the majority of other arcade racers seem to lack, and it's just one more thing I enjoy about the title. With 16 tracks, tons of cars to find and unlock, a co-op feature, and even a stunt challenge mode, the game offers plenty of replay value. It's one of those games that I take down off the shelf about once a year and just spend a weekend with it. While I do have a nostalgic attachment to this title, I'm by no means blinded by it. The presentation is functional at best, so the rubber banding AI can be frustrating at times, but the creativity, solid controls, and frantic action are just fun. Simple, addicting fun. And sometimes that's all you need for a game to truly shine. Hey everybody, and thank you very much for watching Stiles' review of Rumble Racing. I absolutely love this game. I really hope someone watches this and picks it up. It is highly underrated in my opinion. Anyway, on to the more important things. If you liked this video, please like, subscribe, share, all that fun stuff. It is greatly appreciated, especially because getting off the ground is always the hardest part with projects like this. If you like this video, you can also check out some of my other stuff, like my most recent video besides this one, my Stiles series synopsis of Final Fantasy. I will be following it up with Final Fantasy II next time, so thank you very much and have a good day.